My name is Ian and welcome to Planted. In this video I'm going to show you how to shape a hedge. This is more than pruning, this is more than a hedge cutting. It's how to make a hedge look full from top to bottom. Now our subject is my beautiful Fagus grandifolia. This is the American beech, which has beautiful foliage in the springtime that open up so quickly. But one of its real benefits is that it keeps its foliage in the winter, and you end up with this ghost-like silhouette. I'm going to show you how to make this special guide to make the job so much easier, and then I'm going to show you how to use the guide to make the perfect hedge. Let's go. When it comes to pruning a hedge, we end up with a scraggly mess, which is what we have here. In our mind, we think that we want a nice, tall, uniform hedge. But this is very impractical, because that uniform hedge will transform into this version. The top is full, the sides are quite bare. What we want is a taper, a little bit narrower at the top, a little bit wider at the base, and that will ensure that sunlight can get to the base and keep all the branches alive and full of vitality. Now, there's some very important architecture here that we have to get right. It's a 4:5 ratio. The base is 4 units, and I'm fortunate enough for my project, we've got 4 feet across the base, which means that we have 5 feet across the top. So 4 feet and 5 feet, or you can do 1 meter and 1.2 meters. But this ratio means that we take our center line of our roots, and that needs to pass through the very top of our hedge. Otherwise the hedge gets twisted and it gets distorted. This is how you should do it. Now, how do we apply that to my project? Well, I encourage all of you to do this. Make a little diagram and start to add in a few measurements. I've got the front of my house, so there's no sunlight coming from that direction. I have a path or a sidewalk where pedestrians can go up and down, and obviously that's an area that I can't plant in. I then have a little path from my house going away from my house, and this is quite narrow, it's maybe 3 or 4 feet. In the middle, I've got my area where my hedge is planted. Now I want my hedge to be full and healthy, and I've got sun coming in as shown here with these arrows. So it's somewhat distorted, bright sunshine on one side and not so much sunshine on the other. What this means is that one side will fatten up and the other will go sparse. Now I'd like my hedge to overlap my sidewalk, but I do want it to be a bit narrower at the top. So these 4 points joined together tell me I'll get a flat side up to my house, which will be a bit sparser, but that doesn't matter, flat across the top, and then a taper coming out to overlap my path or sidewalk. That's the shape that I've got to create. And then on my sidewalk lip, I'll have a little frame that I've already showed you, and that will give me this parallel line that's consistent to the hedge. And then here comes the taper. Hope this makes sense. Let me show you how it works. To get the right ratio of 4:5, I've got a 16-inch overlap from the edge of my sidewalk or path to where I want my hedge to finish. So this little frame took about 20 minutes to make, and you need to make it robust and strong so it doesn't twist, but don't make it so heavy that it's difficult for you to pick up with one hand and easily move into its next spot. I think I used 6 or 7 screws on this, and very easy to make and incredibly useful. Now, don't skimp on this. This little bit of time you use to make this frame will mean that your shaping of your hedge is so much more effective. And here you can see the overhang that will go down the edge of my concrete sidewalk. Make sure that your surface is flat and able to take this frame. If you don't have a concrete edge, you can put a line, make it tight and fasten it, and then that lip will run down that line. With my concrete edge, this is so super easy. It's very tempting to think that by eye you can cut this tapered plane, but you can't. I've done this on my properties before and for customers on their estates, and there is absolutely no substitute for this very consistent, replicatable angle that I can take down my hedge. And what I tend to do is, on my left-hand side, I will cut off a lot of the growth, leaving 2 or 3 inches protruding. And then I can bring my frame up to it and cut it back to exactly what I want. I want my frame to pass by the hedge without it touching anything. This is how I know that I've done it right. I find this job very rewarding. It's a sort of thing where you start at one end and you think, well, is it going to work? Will it give me the results that I want? And the answer is absolutely. Don't rush it. Make sure that the frame is located at the right angle and is set in that, so that the lip is set properly on the concrete edge. And you just go through and snip, and snip, and snip. And before you know it, you've got your hedge cut back to this nice flat plane. And every time I do this, I'm always amazed. I'm always impressed that it looks as finished as it does. And this is the trick. You start at one end and just come in, and you see you've got that nice parallel edge with that overhang. Now this will let light into the lower branches so that the lower branches can fill out. And this is the whole key with the taper. Once you've got the side done, you then go back and do the top. And you might find there's a few little branches that stick out. In this case, the wind is whipping around a little bit, but you can make sure that you haven't missed anything. And typically you might find a branch that's released that you'll go back and trim. When it comes to the ends, you can easily trim those up too. Now the side between my house and the hedge, I don't need a taper. I'm not looking for this to be full and dense. I just want to be able to walk down there. But here we have part 1 done of our hedge, and you can see the second hedge in the background and how far it sticks out. Nice taper, and this will go right down to the ground. This part of the hedge is about half the size of the previous one I cut, and it actually gets different growing conditions. It gets earlier sun in the morning, right the way through the afternoon, so it does grow much faster. It is much more dense. But there's nothing to change here. It's the same geometry, it's the same method. Cut the sides, then cut the top, and you're all set. Now I want to make the point here that this hedge was planted in 2015. I dug out 2 trenches each side of my stairs, and I planted 3-foot-high seedlings. These were bare root, and they were planted about 1 foot apart. And the reason for that is that this density of seedlings means that if 1 or 2 should die out, there's plenty of other plants to get in there and fill in the gap. If you plant mature trees or mature plants and one dies out, you end up with a great big hole. So definitely a long-term process, but the result is something well worth having. You can see here the amount that was cut off. That plane is now identical to this plane, and we have our tapered hedge. Now I must point out, nice healthy growth that's used to full bright sunlight will retain its green color. Naturally, you are cutting off a lot of foliage, and you will reveal some plants that are used to a more shaded condition. These will scorch and burn. It's a little unsightly. It's not the end of the world. So that is how you shape your hedge. I wish you all the best of luck, and do let me know what you think about the video. Go and cut a hedge, and bye for now.